and welcome back to HR Nightmares. It's been a hot minute, and we are really happy. First of all, I'm happy to see your faces, and I love that we're back together with some regularity. Just yakking it up.
New studio, new space.
Our new studio is really pretty.
So pretty.
It's great. I love it. It's like so fresh and bright.
You guys can't see it, but there's a beautiful mural on the other side of the wall that I'm looking at.
There's good lighting.
Yeah.
Nice people here, and
look at these coffee cups.
I mean, geez.
So
the aesthetic is excellent.
Yeah.
Top notch.
Yeah. Anyway,
we're feeling good. We're feeling
together.
happy. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be back. I'm Lisa Leath, and I've got the ladies. You want to introduce yourself? Who are you, and what do you do?
I am Amy Conway, and I do podcasting. I'm the co-host of HR Nightmares.
She's got a lot going on for her.
I do
beyond
a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Consulting, coaching.
Executive coach, senior HR person, lots of experience in retail, employee relations.
Yeah.
You're now a construction person. You know that, right?
I feel like I've become the expert construction HR business partner.
If you're listening and you're in construction, this is the lady.
You want to know things about how to build a building. I mean, you shouldn't ask me, but I know the lingo at least.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
I can sit in the meeting and hold my own.
What about
Talk
you, Beth?
about joists.
So
my name is Beth Looney, and I'm also a podcaster with you guys, and I don't know, senior HR consultant, putting out fires left and right, having fun.
So,
pulling my hair out.
You guys are awesome. And you have been with me for several years, both of you, and I'm appreciative that you keep putting up with me saying, like, let's do another season of the podcast, or let's have a bunch of guests in and grill them and mostly fly by the seat of our pants, but we do end up having fun. And Beth, I met many years ago. We were trying to hire a head of HR for a client, and we huddled up afterwards and basically took you away and into the consulting world, and never looked back. So I'm so thankful that you did that.
I remember standing outside of this tiny little warehouse where I was working by myself. I was a sole person in a warehouse, and I was like, do you think there will be enough work for me? And I'm like, yes, there is.
Plenty of work. And then Amy reached out. You had just moved to town. You had been with Nordstrom for 18 years. She was like running regions with 8,000 employees and was retail extraordinaire with the good shoes. Never forget.
The good shoes. I still have those.
I mean, she still has good shoes. Yeah. But then we met for lunch, and she gave me a bunch of references. I never called any of them because I could tell she was the real deal.
I mean, I got them ready too.
I know. I'm sorry. I never called those references. So if you were one of those references and you have anything to say about Amy Conway, it's a little late. Yeah.
I still talk to all of them. I'm sure they would have said all good things.
Good. Well, I'm Lisa, and I'm the founder of Leath HR Group. I love this podcast dearly. It's been a really fun pet project over the years, and I'm also the chief people officer for a software company called Vantica. What I want to sort of reflect on besides like our relationships and how it's grown over the years and it's evolved into this podcast, which is, by the way, like now globally listened to. We ran the stats just before we started the recording, and we're listened to in every state except West Virginia. And I'm not totally sure how to unpack that.
We've got a client with a West Virginia office.
I was going to say, that's Beth's client, not mine.
Take care of it.
Green assets, you need to listen.
Take care of it. But we do love getting write-ins from all over the country and Canada or wherever you're listening from. So make sure you submit those on leathhrgroup.com and usually on all the socials through YouTube and on all of our socials. You can send us a DM and ask any questions and just let us know you want it to be anonymous. Whether you're asking questions from an employee standpoint, from a manager's standpoint, from an owner's standpoint, or from a fellow HR person. We want to be a sounding board for you, and we truly enjoy answering those audience write-ins. So make sure that you get those in. But the reason why we started Leath HR Group, or I started Leath HR Group in 2017, was I saw a need in the community where we live and work, which is in southeastern North Carolina. that we have a really budding entrepreneur ecosystem here. And I think for the last couple of years, we've been in the top 100 global metropolitan areas for entrepreneurs to start a business and grow. We have a really good support system here. And so what I'd like to say is it's because of entrepreneurs that the capitalistic world goes around, right? And so you wish for tons of success for every new entrepreneur. We know that's not so. But what we aspire to do at Leath HR Group is try to help the folks who are learning how to run a business and growing their business and really make them more effective, because we are the HR experts, not only from a compliance standpoint, that's kind of like table stakes, but also from, giving good sound advice to our peers on the leadership team, and also kind of being strategic with, okay, if you're trying to grow your business from $200,000 a year to $1 million a year over the next 3 or 5 years, like, how do you do that? And who are the who's that you need to go find, and let me help you. So it's all about the entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs start small. So I'd like to take this episode and go back to just some sage advice for people who are maybe thinking about starting a business, and a couple of tips and tricks that we can share with them in advance of kicking that business off. And then maybe a new business, a small business, and if they're considering, okay, I'm ready to hire my first couple employees, or I just hired my first couple employees, now what? And then also I'm growing, kind of that example I just gave, which is I'm growing fast, I'm growing hard. Holy shit, what do I do? Let's give them some real talk on growth tips and tactics. So where do y'all want to start? You want to start small? You want to start like little seedling entrepreneur with a good idea?
You're at a bar with your friends with an idea to start a business.
Okay, let's start there.
Oh.
So I've had some friends that actually, they know that I'll probably be talking about this on the podcast, so I'm allowed to talk about this. But they had one of those nights where they're like, we're going to have this meal order company. So they were going to make those like healthy meals and meal order company. And they were really excited to start it. And they put a lot of money into it, a lot of sweat equity into it. And they were doing that as their second job. So they have both of them have really great jobs. They did this as their second job. And guess what? It failed, not from their hard work, I think it was failure because they didn't anticipate how hiring younger students to work it, they didn't have a plan for it. Mm-hmm. So I think that is the biggest plan. It's like going from your idea on the back of a napkin to actually like, okay, we're involved. It all is about who you're going to hire, when, and how. Like that's the biggest thing. So and it was really sad that it didn't work for them.
I think a big part from an entrepreneurial, mindset is like you have to have enough grace to know what you're not good at and what you don't know anything about, right? And so it's like if you want a business and you want to be a solopreneur and go out there and do it all yourself and figure it out, that's great. But the minute you become big enough that you have to hire another human, you're responsible for a lot more than just interviewing and hiring that human. Mm-hmm. Like you are on the hook for a lot of stuff, and you have to admit to yourself when you've never done that before, you don't know how. And I think that is where we come in a lot, and we don't work with a lot of like solopreneurs hiring 1 and 2 first people. We work with mostly like once you've kind of established a little bit more and all of that. So that doesn't say that we wouldn't give an hour or 2 of sound advice to somebody. No, absolutely. But I think that that's where, I see is like those smaller businesses that are in that maybe like 10, 15, because that's kind of the entry point of us, come in and they're ready to move to like 20, 25. But there's still a lot of business owners that are in that group that's like, they know they need to do some of these things, but they don't want to because they may cost money or they may cause different decisions or it may create some unrest and discomfort. And it's like, listen, it's what you got to do though. Like this is what we're on the hook for when we employ human beings.
When you're producing something, so let's say I've got a good idea for, I'm thinking about, there's like a new pharmaceutical, there's pharmaceutical companies kind of popping up all over Wilmington. We've got the Marbionic Center, and but you're going to produce a product, let's say a pharmaceutical or an active pharmaceutical ingredient or something from a lab, and you're wondering, sitting at a bar asking Beth, is this a good idea? Or you've got to put it through something called the mom test. And like your mom will always tell you, and probably your friend at the bar is probably going to tell you like, that sounds amazing. But you need to go out and ask some really pointed questions to people who aren't related to you, really don't know you even that well. Think about someone who you really look up to, maybe in the community, in the business community. They don't even have to be in pharmaceuticals. They don't have to be in your industry. But go see if you can buy them a coffee or buy them a beer and tell them your story and tell them what you're up to and what you're trying to sell and see what they think and let them poke and prod your idea. And then also, like, you got to figure out, is this going to financially work? If I'm doing this on the side, like, I gotta have a financial person, whether it's a CPA or an outsourced CFO or an accountant, that can really like help me model the numbers. Like, if I got to do 20 meals a week, you know, how much is that going to cost me in goods, gas, labor,
yeah,
right? Like, so,
and then what's the price? So what's the price point after you add in all of those things?
The margin.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us, I think when you're a smart person, which we all are, and a lot of our friends probably are, it's like, oh, I've got this great idea and I know it can work because I'm a hard worker. And I think you're exactly right. I think one of the first people that I would talk to would be a CPA, a friend, or even an accountant that does your taxes, to just kind of talk to them about the numbers. Because if it's not going to, you know, if you have all of these other costs and it's going to make your price that high that there's not going to be a market for it, then you might avoid a lot of problems.
Right. And then people will be like, oh gosh, well they want to charge me $500. And it's like, if you're not willing to pay $500 freaking dollars, then you shouldn't start this business.
You should not start a business. No.
Well, I think that's what, like, we hear so much, right? And it's like, you're not the expert in that, though. So you have to recognize some of that and be willing to spend a little bit to get some of those experts to weigh in and actually just help you with those specific areas that,
I think the money piece is the biggest piece, because you could have the greatest idea, but if it's not going to launch because your price point is too high, or there really isn't a market for what you're offering, you're just, oh my God. And then I hate it because you're putting in your personal money to make it grow. And it's a hard thing.
So go out and so piece of advice too, go out and find out in your community what support system is available for entrepreneurs with a good idea. There's all things through Small Business Center, SBTDC, probably any university or community college that you have in your community has resources available to you, potentially even grants to help you get a good idea started, particularly if you're going to be hub certified, so women or minority owned. And there's also incubators in a lot of communities that you can go tap into.
Great. Yeah. Because then they also are pooling their resources too. So they might know of an accountant to talk to.
Absolutely. And they may pay for it for you.
Right.
If it really is a good idea. All right, cool. Let's talk about the people.
Can I say something that's so crazy?
Go.
So when we owned, I always talk about this story, but when we owned our small company, we had an engineering firm back in the day. And I remember we got our first paycheck that we got paid, and it was like, $2,800. I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting. But then what husband was, I remember my ex-husband at the time,
Mark.
now, but
shout out to Mark.
He's like, don't get that excited. He's like, out of this check, like, we have to pay for our rent, our electricity, the cars, the vehicles, the equipment, the testing. I'm like, well, crap, like, how much money are we taking home? He's like, about $200. I'm like, what? This is crazy. Our insurance. So, I mean, there's a lot of those costs. And that's why I really think it's important to talk to that. But I was so sad when we got that check. I thought we were rolling in the dough. Like, we were not.
I mean, when you think about the financial, I remember, back in my Nordstrom days, I had, say a $30 million store, and the store down the road did, $110 million or something. I made more profit for the company than that $110 million store.
Why is that?
Because at the end of the day, I managed every single line in those expenses. And I mean, it was up to us, right? So the more you sell, the more you got to spend in order to support the sales, right? So your expenses rise, your rent's different, your product cost is different, right? So it all depends. But at the end of the day, I mean, if I did $30 million, it probably gross profit maybe was $5 million, at the end. And the store down the road, they did 110, but they spent it all. Yeah. So it's like that could easily happen. So that's why it's like it's more than just about having a good idea. You have to understand the whole thing of like the P&L and like how to actually make money from the idea.
And also understanding, I thought it was a joke when I first started Leath HR Group, and we went to our first CPA, and he says, "What's your exit plan?" I said, "What is my exit plan? I'm trying to make a job for myself. Yeah. Like, But honestly, now that I reflect back, it's been, 7 years or more, right? And I think back on, I should have maybe thought about that a little bit as I put the business plan together, because when you either sell your company or you wish to acquire other companies, or you want to go get capital investments from whether it's banks or PE firms or whatever, like they value different things and the market values different things. So growth at any expense, whether you're in the red or not, can sometimes be rewarded. Some industries only reward if you have a certain margin. So you're making money to the tune of 20% plus. Otherwise, they're not interested. While some industries are like, I want to see a healthy mix of growth and profitability. Right. So like, it is kind of important to understand it could be way easy to create $1 million company, but you're spending $1.5 million to show $1 million in top line revenue. So you got to decide up front what your goal is with respect to profitability and your margins. Like, what can you live on? If you're making a job for yourself, what can you live on?
Yeah.
And how quickly do you have to give the money back if you borrowed money from mom?
Or get an SBA loan. Holy smokes!
At least they're 30-year notes at like 2%, so that's not too bad.
That off, it was like we are successful now.
I mean, I can tell you, I walk around town all the time, and more power to all the business owners. And I don't know anything about your margins or your profitability, but as a former retailer who knows a lot about retail, I walk into a lot of places here and I'm like, I don't know how you're making any money. There's so much product in here, and from like an overhead alone on what the rent prices are in some of these places, I see 1-2 customers. I don't see a website. I'm just like, I don't know. Like it makes me wonder, like I would never want to open a small retail store. So more power to the retailers out here. I just know too much about that business, I think.
I've got a really good point to say, and it would be interesting to get your answer. So I think that you have to really, if you're going to start a business, I think you have to really look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you an entrepreneur? And I am not an entrepreneur. It is so nerve-wracking. It's so scary to be like, there's no money coming in and I've got to figure this out. I'd rather be a number 2. That's like my favorite spot to be, a number 2 in the entrepreneur relationship. Like I'll be your second in command, but I cannot have that stress. But my ex-husband, excellent entrepreneur. So you must be like a entrepreneur. Like what do you think about that?
I think she's willing to spend money.
Yes.
But also, like, what? I mean, are you?
I mean, seriously though, you have to be willing to. I tell it to Andy.
Spend money.
I tell Andy all the time. It's like here we are. Spending money on a podcast so we can get our thought leadership out there. We can have a good aesthetic. You can get to know our personalities, and ultimately, I want you to call and get some HR help from Leath HR Group. But yeah, you got to spend money to make money. And if you want to stay stagnant, then just keep doing what you're doing. But you got to think of different ways to get in front of the audience that you're trying to go to market to. So we're trying to go to market to people who have a growth mindset, want to make more money, want to hire the right employees that are going to support their business model and like their vision as an entrepreneur. I love that. And I resonate with that because I feel like the grittiness and like the trying new ideas and being creative is like, that's what makes my heart really happy. I
think you have no fear of failing too. It doesn't seem like that.
I do. I don't want to fail. And so I feel like the fear of failing and like falling flat on my face on something like prevents me from ever like really doing it hard, because like I'm going to just stay up till all hours of the night to get stuff done, or I'm going to get myself in front of the right person to get on stage, or be the lead sponsor, whatever it has to be. Like you have to be relentless in your pursuit to be the best in whatever market that is, whether it's your town or your region or the industry. Like if you want to be the leader, then set your goal on that and make it so. What was that book? The Secret?
That's the secret.
Tell yourself. See yourself doing it. And that was my secret. That was literally my secret when I was a competitive figure skater. It was like you literally had to close your eyes.
Well, there's a new one that people probably didn't know. I don't know that we've talked about. You
had to close your eyes and see yourself doing the full 4-minute routine perfectly. And if you saw yourself falling, you literally had to say, okay, now I'm going to start over again. So like there's a whole psychology too behind, being successful, whether it's with your family or your relationship or your business. I mean, you do have to be self-aware though. Right. And so not everyone's going to look or feel the same as an entrepreneur. And, but I think, something that I learned from Dave Swear, who founded Vanica, is he introduced me this concept of who, not how. And there's a book out there by a guy called Dan Sullivan. And it's all about, rather than focusing on the how, which you typically do as a new entrepreneur, you focus on the who can you surround yourself with that's going to support your ultimate vision for the growth of the company. And don't settle for anything less, right? You really have to get very specific and thoughtful about the who's you want to surround yourself with and the characteristics, the behaviors, their motivators, their stressors. And it's just got to be, you have to be very thoughtful.
Is that why you chose Beth and I?
Absolutely. Yes, of course. I already gave you enough compliments. I'm
You know
done.
what, though? In all
I don't like complimenting people.
To follow, well,
but you gotta
go
buy
work for Lisa.
You gotta
HR.
Go work for Lisa and get your recognition.
check out leathhrgroup.com.
but you know what's the funny thing is that that was a risk for me, and I'm not a big risk taker, but it was a risk for me to leave this job and to go with you. But the reason why I came with you is just because you spelled out the vision, and I literally could see it. I'm like, so I could do this? And you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And I like totally trusted and believed you. And so I think that that's another piece that an entrepreneur has to have. Yeah. Is like, did you trick me? I'm out.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it.
You're busy as all get out.
I know. I thought it was going to be, remember, you were like, yeah, 2 days a week, sit on the beach the rest of the I'm like, No, I'm like kidding. But yeah, I do think that that's a big piece of being an entrepreneur is to be able to explain your vision. Because you're going to have to explain it to funders, banks. You're going to have to be able to articulate that. And sometimes people can't do that very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, like even when you said the fear of failure, I think most people in general don't want to go out there and fail. There's some people that certainly doesn't, they don't have as much of a fear around it. But I think like that entrepreneurial and kind of what we see in you is just like the fear of not doing it though is greater than like the fear of failing at it. And that's what's got to like kind of propel you and motivate you is like, yeah, sure. I don't want to fail. I fear falling flat on my face. Absolutely. But it's not enough to hold me back from moving forward.
It's funny though, my ex-husband, he was like, yeah, if this doesn't work, I've got 75 other ideas.
Right.
And he was always like, boom, boom. He was starting new businesses all the time.
But he had that just like entrepreneurial
He
spirit,
had it
like
deep
always ideas. But people like that often need that second person in the execution part, right?
And
there's
also
visionaries and there's
them
executors,
down.
and they're not always the same person.
Well, that's why I have my husband, and he runs the business now because I realized that taking distributions every year wasn't the way to run the business. And he's like, you need to put yourself on payroll. And so again, going back to like the finance, having a good operative finance person that's telling you like, you're going to drive this thing into the ground if you keep taking owner distributions is like very helpful and interesting to
actually getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
So moving out of like the entrepreneurial, like into kind of the clients that we work a little bit more of.
Yeah, let's start on the smaller side. So we typically work a little bit upstream. You mentioned the entry point, 10 to 15 employees. That's a good entry point. We'll certainly we'll work with hundreds of employees. Right. All of us have been capable of working in thousands of. We love working with strategic clients that are a bit more upstream. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about on the lower end of the continuum there, which is the smaller clients. So let's call it under 10. So I'm thinking about hiring a few employees, or I've just hired a few employees. I mean, it seems silly for us to even let it come out of our mouth, but the basics of employment law are extremely important. How do people get there without hiring somebody like us? I would not advise hiring. Like we have an HR Kickstarter package. Take advantage of that, which is like good job offers, a customized handbook, just so you have guidance and policies, and maybe like some examples of questions to ask during like a 90-day review or checking in with your employees. We can totally help small companies with that, and we like doing that. But like. What advice would you give folks, maybe even beyond calling us? Like, what advice would you give them to just get basic on compliance?
Well, my number one thing is pay. Like that's like the number one thing. If you're going to if you're taking on this thing that you're going to have a business and people are going to be paid by you, you have to follow the law. You have to pay them right. And you have to pay overtime when there's overtime. You need to know the labor laws around pay. I think that's the number one thing for
and the hierarchy of sins, it's like you have to keep people safe, right?
And then paid,
and then you have to pay them properly. Yeah.
And you have to not say, illegal things to them. That would help too. So, I mean, my big thing is like, listen, you can go out there and find a templated kind of simple employee handbook that's got all the basic things that you need to know, right? Like diversity, EEOC, EEO statements, anti-harassment, retaliation.
I'm going to throw a couple zingers at you, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now, hopefully this doesn't get chopped up and completely out of context here on TikTok. So, okay. Well, I don't believe in that I don't want to put all that fluffy stuff in my handbook. I don't believe in the non-discrimination language. Like, this is my business. I can do what I want. What would you say to somebody that says that to you?
You believing in something and it being true are two very different things.
Or it being illegal.
It being illegal.
Yes.
And I honestly, I would say, well, then you shouldn't hire any employees.
Right.
And that's where I will get on my soapbox all day long.
Let your kids work here, and that's it.
You are responsible for human beings and their lives, and that means treating them fairly and within accordance of the law.
Let me ask you a question. Listen, people know they're going to have to come in at night and clean the restaurant. They know they're not going to get paid. So, just don't worry about it. Take that out of the handbook.
Well, then you know what? You should go find a different HR consultant because I'm not working with you.
I will not be taken down with you.
I will not have my good name on any of this. So, yeah,
but
and honestly,
it's education.
We don't really work with those type of clients. I think most of our clients come to us because they know they need this help and they need an expert to help them with it. Most of my clients, I can say, have a desire to make sure they're doing right by their people. And that's why they came to us to begin with, because they don't. Yeah. I mean, most of mine, I can think of a recent client, I'm just doing some project work and simple stuff to get them because they're that 20 person, 25, and they just need to get the stuff in order to make sure. And the CEO literally is like, I just want to make sure that all of my people have what they need from me. And I'm a good employer. This is thing. And I was like,
small business people, send us write-ins. We'll answer your questions for free on this podcast. Okay. We're not the cheapest people in the world. That's because we're really good. And so we want to help you grow. But if you want to take advantage of a little free advice, get those write-ins in. Go to our website and
I'm happy, even with our clients, we do project work and some different things. And I'm like, if you've got something, just call me on the phone for half an hour. It is once in a while. It's fine.
I don't like hearing that, but okay.
I mean,
we're telling people you need to get paid for your time.
You do need to get paid for your time. But I mean, if it's one of those things where it's just it's a 10-minute phone call. It's I would rather them call me and do it right. And chances are we're going to work for them again anyway.
I should have had flashcards and a yes and a no. Okay, so I'm calling.
I want to say one more thing about that. So I think though that you can say I've worked with some clients who are small who might not have known the laws.
Right.
And so they're making these pretty big mistakes that are illegal. And I don't think they're doing it with malintent, but they're still doing it. And that's the kind of clients where I'm like,
here's what we've got. We have HR 101 training, okay, at a very nominal price. You should, if you're I'm not totally sure if everyone understands what the law is, let us come in for 2 hours with your management team and just teach you what it is.
Exactly.
So you have a good understanding.
I was going back to that whole handbook thing. It's just Google. You can probably find on Google an example handbook that would give you just kind of the top 10 to 20 things to put in your employee handbook. Just skim it and have basic knowledge of an no retaliation policy. Oh, okay. You don't have to be the expert on it, but I know not everyone has common sense, but one would say, if people are working a certain amount of hours, you got to pay them for it. Doesn't feel like everybody that we're working for had a job at one point. Did they not have overtime hours? I mean,
do you know that when my child was a high schooler, he worked at a company. He worked at it's a company.
Chicken place?
Yeah, he said company. And I really did pull out the law because I'm like, he gets out of work every night at 11:59 p.m. and they can't work past midnight. And I'm like,
was he 16?
He was 16.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crap. I'm like, this is a little kid. I guess he was a little, but that just kind of really made me mad. So you have to know the laws.
Yeah, they also have to give him breaks under 5 hours. There are, but again, it's just
11:59
Google is a friend. You can Listen, I've been doing this a long time, and there are times where I still have to Google check things.
And that's okay, because not every employment law will come up every day.
Because you know why? It changes. Employment law changes.
It does.
It's different in different states. I wasn't always from North Carolina. I had these states at one point in my career, but I'm not the expert on the 20 states that were in my,
I
career.
love the HR 101 course. We'd be happy to teach it.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a great investment in your company.
The other good
you're not doing
investment for
anything
people is to really spend some time getting good at hiring. Even in large Fortune 500 companies, like, people generally are terrible at hiring. So unless you're hiring like quantities and volume hiring of folks, and you're just like, you've got it down pat, you know what questions you like to ask and what you like to look for, and you're investigatory in your questioning, you're probably not as good at hiring as you think you are. And so getting really good at buying talent versus selling the company and your brand and why people want to work there is extremely important. And that's another thing that the team at Leath can help with is doing some interview training for your managers. And that's extremely important because especially when you're a new company that doesn't know the laws, you're going to say some dumb stuff that crazy people walking through your door are going to want to go and sue you over. So let's say you've got, a perpetual person that just loves to travel around the United States and find vulnerable, that seemingly rich company owners that they just go in and they prey on. And they'll say crazy stuff, in the interview process, or they'll try to catch you saying something that's coming from a good place, like, oh, good luck with the, walking out. I had a client one time years ago. It was a medical location, doctors, family-owned physician practice. And they said to someone interviewing for an office manager job, she left and she wasn't going to get selected, but they said, good luck with the pregnancy. She came back, filed a claim with the EEOC that they didn't hire her because she was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
And that they said they recognized she was pregnant. They said good luck with it. And
but she didn't bring it up in the interview that she was pregnant.
Right. But they did on the way out.
Yeah.
And so just weird little things like that. And you're like, I just said, I was being a human being. I just said, good luck. But
I think that also
but it's like,
people are.
It wasn't necessary, and it had nothing to do.
Correct.
And now you put it into their brain.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
instead of just always thinking about the entrepreneur needing that class, I think that other companies that have been doing it the same old way for years
it's
and years.
the leaders that have been doing it for 20 years that need the class.
I have witnessed some of those interviews, and I'm like, hold on, we're going to stop the we're going to stop this interview right now. And I'm like, we're not.
Also, find out what they were making find out what they were making. Well, no, don't do that. What are you willing to pay? And what is their skill set when they come to the table?
To make in this job? I don't really care what they're making now. Chances
them
are
what
they want to leave their current job because they want to make more money.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you would agree, but in my opinion, most of even my current clients, my former clients that I've, worked with, and this was not something I experienced in my former career. I thought, my clients currently spend way too much time doing the talking versus doing the listening.
Absolutely.
And they talk way too much about the organization because they're so worried about cultural fits. And I'm like, how would you even know if that person fits our culture? You didn't even let them say anything, right? Yeah. And in my old
100%.
Corporate career, yes, we were one of those mass hiring, had it down to a pad, asked the same question to every person. We want it to be legal and fair and everything. But also we asked the question. There was not a ton of elaboration on the point of the interviewer. We let that, unless we were probing for more questions or it became more conversational. We're like, I hope you did your research on this company. We had a brand that spoke for itself a lot of times, but at the same time, I'm like, the interviewee did most of the talking, and right now
That's
what I
very
experience is the opposite. I'm like,
let them talk.
Let them talk.
I think about this story all the time.
You talking, 90% them talking.
Yeah.
Yes.
One time we asked, I was in Charlotte, and I asked somebody, we were following the STAR methodology, right? Situation, task, action, result. That's how you want the person to respond, and you prompt them, and you've got it on the table so they can reference it. And it was for an hourly job, and I said, tell me about your ability to multitask. And she was so nervous and sweating. And she was like, well, on my way here, I was smoking a cigarette and I put the window down and I was on the phone and I was trying to look at the map and I was driving and I didn't hit nothing. And I was like, that's a different answer. That's a different answer. I'll never forget that. I was smoking, and on the window, driving, and napping. And
I mean, she's not wrong. That was good multitasking. Dang. She didn't hit anything.
Glad you made it.
I just have funny interviewing stories that I know that aren't really appropriate now, but they're just funny.
Inappropriate ones are the best ones for this.
I don't know, but there was one time I remember doing it when early in my career, like, okay, I get to do the interviewing, right? And I interviewed this person who was a woman, and she was sitting with her like leg on her, she sat like kind of funky like this. And she was wearing bright pink panties, and that's all I could see. Because I was like, yeah, I need you not to wear a mini skirt and not sit like that. And it was horrifying.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, I got a little distracted by that.
Beth is all the lingerie stories.
It's hard. You got to go back and listen to previous episodes on Beth's inappropriate lingerie story.
But they're not me. They're someone
from employees. Yeah, not her.
Everyone wants to show you their underwear.
That was so crazy. But that was one. And then the other inappropriate one was this. No offense, with this older guy, and he thought he knew everything about interviewing, right? And he's like, I'll take care of the interview. I'm like, well, I kind of put together these questions, and this is like kind of the agenda I want to do. He's like, I've been doing this for years. And he leans back in his chair, and he's like, so tell me about you and your, about you and the missus. What do y'all like to do on the weekends?
Oh,
And I was like, that was his leading question, and I was like, it killed me. So anyway,
you're like, can we get back to my agenda?
Yeah. I was like, how can we judge what his capabilities are?
And they're like, me and the missus. No, me and the mister. Like,
just
so many assumptions there.
Yeah, that's where it's just like,
but he just have an agenda.
But he
has
been interviewing for 40 years, and he knows what's right. So if you're an HR person,
great example of a terrible interviewer.
Be sure that you.
It's a great example of someone who's going to get sued next week.
Yes. So anyway, that was a long time.
We're dealing with a number of lawsuits over here. Yeah.
Interview well.
Well, let's talk about with the last couple of minutes. Let's talk about growing companies, and this is really our sweet spot, where we kind of plug in, and maybe they're having an inflection point because the HR director or the head of HR for their company or this particular location maybe is turning over. They've resigned, or you've decided they're not a good fit and you've terminated them. Now you've got this big gap on the leadership team from a people and culture standpoint, people operations, HR, whatever y'all want to call it. That's what we do. And so want to talk about whether we're coming in to kind of do an evaluation of the current state, or we're stepping in on an interim basis, or we're helping them go find their next HR leader. What are some of the most important things that you guys find with growing companies that are well established, that have a growth mindset, that we love to work with?
I don't know. It's hard to think. I mean, I enjoy those more, in taking them from kind of like already a place where they're super well established and they have most of those people pillars kind of in place, and it's just time to expand them. But I mean, I think my biggest thing is just helping kind of those business leaders think about planning for the next 5 years and what it looks like. Because what I see a lot with the businesses, they're in the growth phase and they want it all now, right? They're kind of, that's where they're at. And with people pillars specifically, what we do and what we've seen in our old careers and our current careers, people can only handle so much at one time, right?
Correct.
So I have a lot of business leaders where it's like, let's do it all now. Let's get let's upgrade the HRS. Let's integrate this now. Let's move our performance reviews to this platform in this way.
Let's get a mentoring program. Let's do a leadership training.
It's like, well, let's actually run the day-to-day business. Like, we have to also sell the product we're selling and whatever we're doing. And we have to run the day-to-day. Like, it has to be in steps. And a lot of times what we do is roadmap it over 24 months to 5 years, right? So, and that's where, like, I think that's what I see a lot, and probably specifically the growth phase we're in, because it's kind of taking it from 80 to 150 or 100 to 300, right? So there's those little, or like the $2 million revenue to the $10 million revenue. So they're kind of in that, like, going to make a pretty big leap. And they sometimes that requires slowing down a little bit. And that's the opposite of what those business leaders want to do, because we're propelling the sales or the revenue or the head count, but it actually requires maybe like slowing down and being a little more methodical in how we deliver the people stuff, because people get burnt out really fast from change. Yeah. And you just can't do it all at once.
Yeah. What about you?
I agree. I think it has to be like, I think it's funny because on entrepreneurial mindset, they do want to move fast and they see the vision, but they have to wait for everyone to kind of fall in and understand it. And I feel like sometimes that's a great place for us to plug in because we can really help them with that. But yeah, like for an example, I'm working with a client that's very much like trying to do all the things at once. And, it doesn't resonate with the employees. They're stressed out, and so it's like you have this huge growth plan, but then what are you doing with your current employees? Are they on board? Do they understand where we're going and why, and what is the imperative? And I think if you don't bring them along, it's just gonna implode, because then those people are gonna leave, and then not only are you trying to grow, but now you're trying to refill what you had.
You have to spend so much time communicating the vision. And I think I don't know what you see, but I've seen a lot of our business leaders they're like exhausted from communicating. I'm like, get used to it. The more people you have, the more times you have to say it. When you only had the team of 10 or 15, it was really easy to communicate, and you were stressed out about communicating with them then. And you all sat like in the same little, 1,000 square foot office. Now you going to 500 employees, you have
multiple
to 10x
floors of a business.
The amount of times you communicate, because all of it gets missed in the trickle downness. You know, when you add in mid-level managers that don't have those same skills, right? Like it was CEO to all employees, and now it's like how many layers have to communicate the message, and it need to be the same. So,
and I think
there's a lot of misses there.
Bringing the employees, because they're used to, I can just walk into the CEO's office, and now it's not going to be that way because we've doubled.
Access has changed.
And so the access has to be, I think it has to be communicated, and you just want to make sure that everyone's kind of on board with where we're going. I feel like there's a lot of stress.
And be honest, when people can't keep up and aren't on that same trajectory, I think that can be really hard for our small business leaders, because they develop these, my pet peeve, family.
Yeah. I hate that too.
If you're watching on YouTube, I'm air quoting, or you're not watching on YouTube.
Stop calling
it's
your
like, it's not a family. It's a business. It's a place of work, all of that. And it's like they've created this little like
except at Leath HR, it actually is a family business.
I mean, I won't even go out to happy hour half the time. I don't know if you can consider that family.
Oh my
Maybe
God.
they are like family to me.
Yeah, you don't want to hang out with your sister.
I don't want to hang out with you all the time.
You guys are funny.
Hey, listen, we love our entrepreneurs. And so, for the folks that are thinking about starting a business, get a good support network out there. Go to the ecosystem in your community, SBTDC, small business, talk to people who aren't your mom about your business idea. And then if you're just starting up and you're thinking about hiring some employees, think about getting some training on some basic employment laws, get somebody to review policies, practices, tell you how to interview well. That's where we do really great. And then also if you're established, you're growing, you're kind of wondering, is my HR person really good? Or you're the controller or the CFO and you're thinking, I am friggin' sick of these people issues and I need somebody to come in and handle this. I got to handle the financials. This is a waste of my time. Somebody else come deal with the employee relations. We are, what do you call that? When you like, you're a glutton for punishment, like masochism or something. Yeah, we're really good at that. So we're gluttons for punishment. We'll handle all the lawsuits. We'll put great employee relations and employee experience practices in place.
It's not my favorite thing to do. Let's not.
No, but we'll deal with it so you don't have to. So all in all, thank you to all the entrepreneurs that are out there. We wish you much success. I feel very thankful for Leath HR Group and the team at Leath. And also at Vanica. I mean, we're a growing software company. It's really cool. I've never done this before. Try to create $1 billion software company in a few years, and it's a wild ride, and it's extremely fun. I learn something every day from my peers there. So thanks for tuning in to HR Nightmares. This is going to be a phenomenal season. We've got some really cool guests, faces that you haven't seen before. We're going to get lots of different perspectives, and we really want to hear from you. So get those audience write-ins in. This is free advice. Come on, nothing's free. We definitely don't like giving stuff away for free unless it's on the podcast. So hit subscribe, like us, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. That's HR Nightmares.